to Winning Wednesdays with Pear VC. At Pear, we've been fueling the next generation of tech startups for 10 years. Working closely with founders since the beginning of their journeys, we've seen again and again that a good product isn't enough to build a meaningful business. You must have a winning strategy and go to market as well. We believe that leveraging community, learning from one another, is key to establishing the right winning mindset, frameworks, and strategies.
Enter Winning Wednesdays with Pear VC, a bi-weekly 45-minute webinar series on GTM topics that provides actionable insights to founders and teams building from 0 to 1. Our webinars are broken up in 2 parts. Part 1 is a 20 to 25-minute presentations from a guest with GTM expertise, and Part 2 will be a live Q&A session. We are your hosts, the Pear GTM team. I'm Pepe.
And I'm Anna. Today, we're thrilled to have Cynthia Gomez with us. Cynthia is a healthcare tech and customer relationship leader and champion. She has years of experience building and leading effective customer success organizations at companies like Turquoise Health and Flossie. She now spends the bulk of her time advising startups looking to supercharge customer success and volunteering at places like her alma mater, Stanford University, and running alumni groups there. We invite you to turn on your cameras and engage with reactions as Cynthia shares her presentation. After her remarks, please participate actively in our Q&A. Without further ado, we'll give the floor to Cynthia. Cynthia, we're so happy to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen? Yay!
Yes.
Okay, so I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Anna and Pepe, for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to your questions. I know there are some fun ones that have already come through. So who am I and what experience do I have and what can I share? So most importantly, I am a dog mom. That is my dog. Her name is Cookie. She is 15. She is blind, deaf. She has one eye. She is the best. And she used to be our office emotional support dog, especially for my customer success teams when we were firefighting and working with customers and issues. So she's a big part of my journey. And like Anna mentioned, really, I started out my first career as a healthcare consultant for many years in hospitals and health systems. And then my second chapter was helping build CS organizations, mostly in B2B organizations in healthcare and health tech. So marketplaces, enterprise software, SMB software. And then really in this third chapter that I'm in, I help consult on with early stage startups and customer success and operations. But I'm also working with organizations that support foundation and nonprofits. So it's really fun to bring that customer success experience into new and different industries. And so really what I'm hoping to share with you all today is what I've gathered from my CS journey and the things that I wish I had known when I was going from 0 to 1. It won't be everything. There's way too much. I had to pare this down a lot, but just some of the big highlights. And really this question that I have on here, it's are you trying to build a CS team, a customer success team, or is your goal really to build a customer-centric organization and company? Which you might be yes, both, but one is a mindset and one is an operational strategy, right? And that mindset is the thing that's going to make you the most successful. So let's dive in. So what is customer success at a 0 to 1 organization? And really at the heart of it, it's everybody. Everybody is customer success at an early stage startup. So it's your sales team, your marketing team, your engineering team, your product team, and anyone who's client facing. At an early stage organization, the responsibility of renewals and churn is the responsibility of everyone. So as you mature and you grow, some of that might form and change, and there's different roles and responsibilities that people take on. But that's why I created this wheel that you see. There's bidirectional interactions with CS. I think of CS, obviously we're talking about customer success. So that's the spoke of the wheel. And all of the other departments are ones that you interact with and have these bidirectional relationships. One can't be successful without the other. And really, like, from my perspective, customer success in these early stages is acting as the voice of the customer, right? You can't have a company without customers, whether you're B2B, B2C. And so how does the voice of the customer, your desire to delight your customer with your product or your offering or your service, really create the way that you interact with them, the way that you gather feedback, the way that you sell, the way that you market? What is that? So if you guys have already established some of this, it's great. If you feel like you haven't established this, or all you're trying to do is be very reactive, that's also totally okay. I think the number one thing I hear from early stage organizations is, I feel like I'm firefighting, and we're going to talk about that. Am I okay? Am I in the right place? Am I going about it the wrong way? So whether you have all of these teams or you don't have these different departments and teams, I think the most important thing is that it's a team effort so far in this beginning. So sometimes companies may focus on sales. Obviously, you need to sell, you need to have something to sell and raise money, etc. But why should you also focus on customer success early? Sometimes we see customer success hires happening right away, like account managers or maybe customer support. Other times, everybody's sort of pitching in to deal with the, handle and help a customer be successful, but you don't really hire or dedicate a customer success person, team, or strategy until later. But I wanted to highlight the reasons that it's important to focus on it really, really early. So indications of growth. We're all raising capital. We're obviously here with Pear VC. And actually metrics of customer success, which we'll focus on later, especially NRR as being one of them, can be really good indicators of your company's growth and the success that you may have. So like, the numbers won't lie, right? If you can talk about your churn, if you can talk about your expansion, if you can talk about your land and expand, it's really important to be able to show that through your customer success strategy and framework. Building a better offering. So customer success is the place and the hub where you can get a lot of client feedback, whether that be in real time, whether that be during periodic interactions where you're trying to help your customers realize value. Your product offering or service can only get better if you are proactively and consistently engaging with your client base. And so when we think about that customer success mindset, it's really about those folks whose job and role it is to focus on engaging with your customer, right? On getting to know who they are, understanding their pain points, on being able to understand where they realize value, where do they get stuck. In addition to the way that you may be tracking them in your product or your platform, it helps you build a better offering overall. And a better offering means that you have a stronger brand, right? I come from the world of healthcare. Healthcare is very big, but also can feel very small. In most of my companies, my clients have left to take a new opportunity, maybe the same role at a new place. And so if they did not have a good experience with my brand, then they did not bring me along to their new hospital, health system, wherever they went, right? And those folks talk to each other. So in the healthcare space, for any of those who are in the healthcare tech world, all of those conferences that you go to, at all of the networking events, or et cetera, where you might meet your customers, or your sales team is going to be meeting potential new customers, brand recognition is really, really important. So building a good brand, expanding on that brand, and having your customers really follow you along the vision and the journey that you're trying to create for them is super, super important. Also, if you are having great success with your customers, they become your champions and your advocates, right? So free marketing, like case studies, all of the ways that they really support you, but referrals and references and those dedicated messages from your true customers and your advocates is super, super important and makes you look amazing and your customer success team amazing and your company. And then last but not least, raise capital, right? So in my companies, I have been part of board presentations and part of data gathering. I sit alongside the head of sales, the head of product, the head of engineering, reporting to the CEO. And it allows me to really help make sure that I can help my company craft the story, craft the messaging, and craft the the metrics that we're going to be displaying and showing. Okay, so we talked a lot about kind of like, what does it look like from a high level foundation and view in terms of customer success, but what does it look like from an operational perspective, right? So there's the like, what I wish it looked like, what I wish we did, but what does customer success actually sort of look like? And at an early stage company, it looks like a lot of things. So these are some of the different tenets of what's part of customer success, really what I call sort of like the umbrella of customer success. So within customer success, there is implementation, onboarding, oftentimes called that, account management or customer success management here, where it's like, what's the analysis, who's really focused on that big picture renewal and the important touch points that are part of it. There's knowledge management, right? So you might have a knowledge base, you may have a help center, et cetera. Who's creating that? Who's building the content? It's not just your marketers. There's support, and there may be a question later on what's the difference between customer success and customer support. I love that question. Renewals, so negotiation. I'm a good customer success person because I'm a non-sales salesperson, right? I love the role that I play. I love how maybe some of my compensation is structured, but like I am always selling. I'm always representing the brand. I'm always thinking about keeping revenue, expanding revenue. But the way that I approach those interactions with my customers is not from a sales standpoint. I'm focused on creating good renewals by delivering value, by helping them achieve big or small goals, by making my customer a champion within their own organization and with my organization. It's really about that relationship and that rapport. And then operations, right? There's a lot of operations that goes on in the background of customer success, managing your sales force, managing implementation, pipelines, project management, anything that you can believe is under the sun. So as your organization grows and matures, some of these components become their own teams and departments. Like I've had implementation teams, I've had support teams, et cetera, and they may or may not live under customer success. But early on, this is kind of like the gauntlet of what you are creating overall. And you're likely wearing a ton of different hats. And that's totally normal and totally fine. Okay, so we talked about, what is it from a mentality standpoint? We talked about what does this look like sort of operationally? And this next part, I really wanted to talk about like, what's a good place to get started no matter where you are? Where's a good place to take some stock? So some of you may have a CSM, some of you may have a CSM team, some of you may not be ready for that yet, or maybe you don't have a dedicated role. And so I really tried to think, what are the things that I wish I knew sort of early on, or have like sort of looked back and said, I really wish I could have done this, made more time for this, or spent more time focusing on this area. And so that's what I'm going to jump to next, because I'm prefacing that because the next slide, you might be like, what does this mean? So this is really like my screaming point, like, oh my God, this is a lot. Where do I start? And if your current customer success efforts feel like you're firefighting constantly, if you feel like I can't get to everything, I can't get to everyone, I feel like I'm running around with too much going on, I want to say it's okay. You're not alone. Whether you're the CEO or you're the customer success person, if that's what it's feeling like, it's fine. I would say on average, most of the early stage startups that I consult with and advise on in the first 2 years, and this is mostly for companies that are under like 25 people, they may have one CS person, one or two, really depending on the size and the complexity of their product. I've worked on highly complex, highly regulated products, and those are the organizations where I've seen them scale their customer success teams a little bit more quickly than some of the other orgs. But I want to say, wherever you are, it's okay. And you can get to where you need to be, as long as you can hopefully make some time for it. So most early stage startups start from a reactive standpoint, or the intention of being proactive, but needing to be reactive in the way that businesses just run and operates. And so my advice or my encouragement here is to really make time to take a step back, Number two is really take stock of your talent. So who are the folks that are in those customer success roles or functions, even if that's not their, like title, and really think about what are the skills that they bring to the table, what are the talent that they have, and are they in the right place to be the most successful in your company, but also with your customer base. And then use data where you can, right? We live in a world where we can probably gather a lot of data from our own products and offering, but also how can you use data to make good data-driven decisions about how you can engage with your customers. So if we take one more step back, you as the customer success professional or team at your organization is along for the ride that your customer is on with your product, service, or offering, right? Like you should be there cheering them on. You should be there helping them get to that next phase or that next milestone. And your goal should be to delight your customers with whatever you're bringing to the table. It should be to create those champions, et cetera. So how do we do that from a tactical yet like strategic frame point? And the first place that we do that is really with customer journey maps. So this is a relatively simple idea and framework, but it can be really, really powerful. And so there are customer journey maps that are internal for your organization, and then there are customer journey maps that you can use to be external with your customer and your client. So these are some building blocks. I put in some resources at the end that I'll definitely share with the Pear VC team. There's this really wonderful webinar that uses some of these screenshots that I've used that dives in really, really deep. So I'm just going to be talking about it at a high level, but I do really highly encourage that webinar. There is a lot of customer success content available online. A lot of it will come from customer success platforms that they want you to buy. Right? There's a ton of customer success software, et cetera, out there, but some of them build some really great content. And a lot of this is from client success for this customer journey mapping. And I feel like they do a great job of bringing these high level ideas that you can then extrapolate from and pare down for your business and what you offer. So really the point of the customer journey mapping exercise is to really think about the engagements and the activities that will guide your customers through a partnership, right? That you're really building with them. Whether you're B2B or B2C, it's a partnership, right? You're building trust, you're trying to build morale, you're trying to get your customer to remain in that partnership with you. And so making them a big part of that journey is super important. So this is looking at, I look at this first one as about how are you creating the internal customer journey map? So the points from left to right, right? What's the handoff or the interactions between the internal cross-functional teams that make your customer journey sing and move along? How are you understanding your customer? So do you understand your customer personas? Hopefully some of these things are ringing true, right? Like who are the right stakeholders? And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. How are you creating good alignment with your customer? So like, what are the values that they're trying to achieve? What are the predictive patterns of behavior? So when I think about building a customer roadmap or journey map internally, I do it along with my product team, right? So you built a feature X. How will I know what's the milestone my customer has to achieve in order for feature X to be successful? You build it internally together so that you can give the product team really good feedback if your customers are getting stuck anywhere, or if people are not using a new feature, or people are not accomplishing the major tasks. Opportunities to delight your customers. So identifying where internally you think those things will be and where they'll happen. And then obviously built in a voice of the customer. And what I think of when we think of internally is how are we creating feedback loops within our organizations for that information. So CS should be meeting with product. CS should be meeting with engineering. Those three folks should meet together, right? How are you creating that cross-functional interaction? Now, this is talking a little bit more about how can you build a customer journey map that brings your customer into the conversation, right? So you as an organization can say, I want my customer to achieve this milestone at this time frame. Is that realistic to your customer base, right? like, you don't know, I've worked in disruptor organizations. I'll give you one example. So I worked for a B2B SMB that became an enterprise software in the healthcare space. And so my client personas were physicians, like direct medical physicians, their medical group organizations, and the hospitals or surgical centers where they worked. So those are my three personas in the world. And the head of my product team really wanted the physicians to take an action that unlocked a number of different features in my platform. But me being the boots on the ground, like I would go and observe how the different components of the process happened. I would also talk to all of my different personas and say, if I really want to unlock this level of features on my platform, who is the person who would typically make that happen? And everything in my customer conversations, customer surveys, or boots on the ground efforts pointed to the fact that the medical group administrators held all the power. While the clinicians were the key to all of the data, the medical group administrators were the ones who were really making the operational steps happen in the background. And I went back to my product person and I said, you know what, I really think we need to assign a delegate to this step so that the physician could take the action, sure, if they needed to, but really that the delegate could take that action on their behalf, just like they do in the real world, in the way that they function. And that step is just a step to get to our actual milestone, the actual value that we're trying to realize for them. And I got a lot of pushback, a lot of pushback. This is a hard-fought battle because, you know, my wonderful product person and my CEO really wanted to change the way that clinicians did this action. And I said, we can absolutely do that. We can absolutely keep it this way, and we can try a change management approach. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a high value piece of the action or the long journey that the physicians really cared about. And so in my effort to be democratic, but also pushy, which you have to be as a customer success person, because I'm the voice of the customer in the organization. We A/B tested it for a period of time. We looked at the results and we saw that the delegates were able to accomplish an action 80% of the time versus the physicians only did something 10% of the time, right? And really what we were trying to get to was step C, and we were getting stuck on step B. And so it's really about, how can I create a customer journey map? How do I want my customer to interact with me, interact with my product, but from the outside in approach, from what my customer wants to do, not just what I want my customer to do, which is sometimes hard because you live and breathe your product and or service. You think it's the best. I would agree with you, but you know, they're the ones who are interacting with it and using it. Defining key milestones, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, what are you trying to achieve, or are you trying to get? Align on ownership. So I love this. I don't think enough early stage companies do this. It's okay to create expectations of your customer. So when you you've sold them something, maybe you're in the onboarding process, I encourage everyone as part of a handoff to have an overview of like, hi, Anna, hi, Pepe, you've bought this service. We're locked in for a year, right? The goal is to be here for 3 years. And so what do the first 6 months look like? What do the first 3 months look like? And here's the role that I'm going to play as your CSM. And here is the role that I need you to play and all of your stakeholders. This is what I need your IT department to do. This is what I want you to do. This is what I need your buyers to do. And really letting them know we're going to be touching base on a cadence that works for you. But like, I am your partner in this. I'm going to be there with you and along with you. It's okay to assign them homework, like things that need to get done. I think sometimes early stage, we're afraid of like bugging our customer or bothering them, and that doesn't matter here. It's okay to give them homework, assignment, responsibility. Share with your customers, obviously, the wins, and this is about sharing the journey with them and what you want them to accomplish, and then obviously measure stuff. So the next 2 slides are really, I'm going to go through them super fast. This is like what it could look like. So creating a customer journey map can have, this one just has 4 stages as a high level view. You could have 10 stages, you could have 3 stages, but this is the very high level. Align, execute, realize, and advocate, right? It encompasses kind of everything that I talked about. But obviously, if you double tap into each of those, there's many actions that go into each of those different phases. And this is an infinity sign, not just because I think they're cute. It's really because as soon as you're done advocating about maybe product one, service one, hopefully you can realign at your renewal about these are all the things we accomplished in year one or month one, and this is what we're trying to realign to accomplish in year two, month two. Also, if you have a land and expand model, right? Then what you're expanding on, you have to realign and kind of restart that process potentially on what that looks like for your new offering or your new service. All right, I want to keep going quickly here. So data, we talked about data being really, really important. And so there are a number of customer success metrics that the internet will tell you you can use, not use, et cetera. I'm just going to talk about 3. And the first 2 are really about getting feedback at different points in the journey from your customer. So if you're in a SaaS business, and especially in a like B2B SaaS business, NPS is still really, really important. NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. And it's based off of this one very simple question. How likely is it that you, your customer, would recommend this company service, et cetera, to a friend or a colleague? I take out friend usually because we're talking B2B, like unless their friends work with them, we're really talking about another business or your colleague. And depending on their answer, the colors here indicate whether they're detractors, they're passive, or they're your promoters and or your advocates, right? And so the way that you calculate this is you take your percentage of your promoters, your folks who are your advocates, your champions, and they're still with you on this journey, and you subtract by the percentage of your detractors. So some people love NPS, some people hate NPS, and then some people use CSAT, so customer satisfaction. So this is really kind of like a different type of Likert scale. This is like a little more touchy-feely, if you will, versus, 5, like that 1 to 10. And this is asking, how would you rate your satisfaction with, in this case, a monkey learn? And this is sort of how you calculate it, right? Your positive answers, your total responses, what is that percentage of positivity that you're getting from that satisfied and very satisfied? The one thing I took away from statistics back in college was that you can make numbers tell whatever story you want, right? And so I think the important part here to me is really, what are the internal questions that these metrics are sharing? So we take a look back at NPS and we talk about, is this product feedback or is this feedback on your customer success program, right? If you ask me, how would I rate my satisfaction for Monkey Learn, but I have a lot of bugs in my system or features that I was told would be there but are not there yet, I would probably say I'm very unsatisfied or I am unsatisfied. That may not be a reflection of my CSM. That may not be a reflection of the onboarding or anything else. It may be a reflection of just the product and where the product is itself. So I think when you think about NPS or CSAT, these questions are important. What is this telling me? Is this giving me feedback about my product? Is this giving me feedback about my CSM? And also, when am I asking these questions? So you could ask these questions right after implementation. You could ask these questions right after a renewal. You could ask them after a product launch. I mean, you can use them at many different points in time to get information. But the most important thing is that you follow up on these responses, no matter what end of the spectrum they land, especially if it's in the negative side, right? Like customers who are unhappy will tell you why they're unhappy. And it's important to document that information and think about what is a plan, and are those issues pervasive? Are they specific to this customer because they have a very specific use case that we can solve for, or is it something that's very broad across our organization? And then compare yourself to where you should be in your industry. It really depends on what type of offering you have. When I worked in like health, SaaS, enterprise, B2B, like a 65 NPS was not bad, right? Like it didn't feel great when you're like, it could be 100, but you were also able to really think about, all right, how do we move it to 70? How do we move it? How do we move incrementally and not feel like I have to make a huge jump? And also the breakdown of your detractors and your promoters is important. If you look at 2 different companies and they have a huge number of satisfied people and a very small number of dissatisfied people, and the opposite side is the opposite problem, but those NPS and CSAT scores look the same, you really have to dive into the data. So don't just look at the big number, look at the breakdown of what those detractors and promoters are to really get more information from your customer base. The next one that like the concept is not new to me, but like the naming of it, I think became more popular in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, is this concept of NRR. And the reason I say that it wasn't new to me is that as a customer success leader, oftentimes when your leadership team is asking you about churn, you can talk about churn in a number of different ways, right? Like, have you lost accounts and contracts? Have you lost dollars? Have you lost both of them together? Is it gross? Is it net? But this is the one that I really feel like is standing out and also helps your customer success team shine. So as a customer success leader, let's say I have a book of business of 100 contracts or customers worth X amount of money. I may lose a customer, but I may have sold an existing customer an upsell in price on the same service, or I may have helped and sell them a new offering. And so that dollar value may be larger than the dollar value that I lost in a churn customer, right? For whatever reason, a product related reason, a fit reason, a competitor reason, etc. But that overall calculation would still show positive momentum by the customer success team and all of their efforts, as well as positive momentum in overall company metrics and growth. And so that's what NRR here is really trying to achieve. And in this example, it's talking about it in MRR, so monthly recurring revenue. You can do it on an ARR level for annual recurring revenue, but you're talking about what recurring revenue did you start with, minus taking out the downgrade recurring revenue if any costs went down, minus the churn revenue, but then adding in the expansion revenue so that you could potentially show, right, a positive NRR rate, showing that like, yes, money went out the door, but we overcompensated for it, for new money that came in of your existing customer base. This is not about new sales. This is about what is that team achieving with your current and existing customer base, which feels amazing as a CS person, because sometimes all of the effort that you put in just didn't work for some people, but for those promoters, those advocates, those very satisfied customers could really create huge wins. All right. Taking a little bit of a pivot, I want to talk about some early customer success pitfalls that I have seen and personally experienced. And so, and that I hear in my industry and amongst my customer success folks, right? So number one is not identifying all of your key stakeholders. And so your sales team is wonderful. I'm sure you adore them. And I'm sure that like in their motivation and in their incentive, they've identified the buyer, who's going to sign off, who's going to approve, etc. Once that handoff happens to customer success, there may be other people that we haven't taken into consideration who are really, really important. Something that happened to me a lot in the healthcare business was that my buyer, so my dollar decision maker, was a high-level VP, a CIO, etc. But my users, the folks that my customer success team and I had to interact on a day-to-day basis, that we had to convince, that we had to make our advocates, had no idea that a new software had been purchased. Like they were just handed and introduced to us and said, okay, this is a new thing that you have to add to your plate and a new task, and here's some new people, and here's all this new stuff that you have to do. And please do it well, because this cost me a lot of money. And that didn't go so great, right? As you can imagine. And it didn't go so great because my users were like, here's another hat I have to wear, Cynthia. And maybe they were not part of the decision process or the buying process. And so I'm honestly having to resell them on what it is that they're going to be a part of, my journey with. And so really understanding those personas in that customer journey map, really building relationships, right? So what is the motivation for your users to use this product? What role do they have to play? How do they define wins versus how might their boss define a win? Or the financial stakeholders define a win? And then really identifying who needs to be your champion. So I can't remember where I put it, but one thing I'll mention here is oftentimes you can be very successful at using your customer, your user, as your champion. So I usually turn my users into champions by making them look good in front of their boss. Therefore, they have buy-in to my product, my service, my offering. And even if my product sucks, or even if my product is having a really, really hard time, because I make them look good, they stay with me. and they won't complain to their boss, or they might say, you know what, we've had a roadmap, like all of this stuff, but they're still committed to the way that I make them look good over a SaaS product, right? Like that's the human interaction and the human connection that's really important. Number two, onboarding. Onboarding is so important. Handoff. I know there's a question about handoff, so I'm going to save that for then. Early pitfalls is that you as a leader or you as a company are not fostering great relationships between your cross-departmental teams. Your CS team has to get along with your sales team. They cannot be at odds over compensation, over, bonuses, etc. They have to work with product. They have to work with engineering. It is a team effort. Number three is super huge. Assuming quiet customers are happy with your product and or service. No way. Quiet people may have never even logged on. That person could have left the company and you don't even know. Like making sure you're touching base with the folks that need to be there. Not meeting with product about roadmap and feedback is an early pitfall. Like this is all about communication and teamwork. Reviewing your NPS and your CSATs constantly, right? How are you meeting with that? But also that your leaders know what it is. Getting your product team on customer calls if things are not working. Like you are allowed to bring other people to diffuse tension or challenging aspects. I do that all the time. Like internally, we're like, I'm going to scapegoat you today. I'm going to scapegoat you today, but that's okay. You're on the same team. Your customer doesn't know any different. And then number 6, discussing your renewal strategy early. So how are you going to get folks to renew? Is your goal to increase rates? Like, what is your goal? Don't wait till 3 months out. That's too late. 6 months out, you should know what that strategy and what that's going to look like. And then my number one thing, obviously I'm a CS leader, so this is what I think. A leadership team that doesn't celebrate customer success wins is going to lose you people, right? So early on, sales is super important, obviously money that's coming in the door, but that CS team and those CS efforts are about keeping money in your house and inviting other people to come in to that house, right? Like their colleagues, their friends, etc. But a CS win is a reflection of everyone's effort. And so the way that you celebrate those wins is super, super important in keeping morale and keeping folks who are dedicated to your customers and want to see them succeed, like feel rewarded, feel appreciated, and feel valued. Ultimately, you're building a company of people and not just products and data. And so undervaluing your customer success team and efforts is not a winning strategy. The next question I get a lot is, when should I hire? And the answer is yesterday, whether you have customers or not. My first 2 companies, I was brought on before we had our first sale, and I actually was part of the first sale. Because I, as the CS leader and the customer person, I learned how to do the job that my customers were trying to accomplish. These are some early roles that I see happen. So your CSMs or your account managers, your implementation folks, and your customer support people. And the reason I risk the responsibilities here is that sometimes we talk about like, what should an AE do versus a CSM do? And really it's about what you as a leadership team or what you as a company, where do you want the focus of that person to be? Where do you want their time, their focus, and their effort to live? And that's how I think about where we structure roles and responsibilities. I know I'm almost out of time. This is my last slide, or I'm past time, I apologize. But I also get a lot of questions about what are the best skills and attributes in great CS hires. And so you see at the top here, we're talking about empathy. Empathy is super, super important. Building rapport, feeling the pain of your customer along with them. I would send my customers flowers for different events, right? Celebrations, etc. They were not my friends, but I really needed them to be a part of that journey with me. You also need people who are going to be product experts, right? Outside of your product team, your CS team has to be a product expert. The ability, I think the difference between good and great customer success people is this ability to understand needs and goals versus being able to anticipate needs and goals from your customer. That's the difference between good to great. And being customer curious, right? So I am curiously pushy, right? So like I will try to get in front of my customer. I will try to create those opportunities without being annoying or annoyingly curious, really, but without like crossing that line. And then I really say someone who's not easily frazzled. That's probably my number one. Like you need your customer success folks are the people who are in the trenches with you. They they have to constantly reprioritize. They have to constantly think about what are hacks. They are the scrappiest people on your team sometimes, along with everyone else. And so those are the qualities and the attributes that I really see folks being the most successful at this and who want to be there, right? I know there's questions, but that's it. I know there's a lot. Cookie says goodbye. I'm here. This is a list of some of the resources that I put together, and there's certainly more that I can send off, but a lot of these are links to webinars, resources, PDFs, and places where you can have some of these frameworks or these concepts and ideas and think about how do you pare them down to where you are in your journey of building this out. Thanks so much.
Cynthia, that was amazing. Wow,
Yes.
so full and rich. And we do want to take questions, so we know we're close to time, but see a number of folks. So please, if you have a question, chime in. Now's the time. We'll probably take a few, but we do have some prepared questions. And that was just so full. And I think a lot of what I was thinking as you came out is there's a few things that I think would be really helpful. One is the right tooling for CS. You sort of touched on this, but is there, from day one, like what would you say is an important thing to bring in early?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on budget, right? At some of my organizations, we really started with like Google Sheets, Smart Sheets on like, figuring out an implementation plan, et cetera. But the number one thing that I would invest in, depending on, I think regardless of whether you're B2B or B2C, is a chatbot. Like, so Intercom, like HubSpot, a lot of these places have something where your customers can interact with you.
Yeah.
Now with AI and the opportunity to like, have people enter a question, get them to a help desk or a knowledge base where they can self-serve as much as possible, and then be able to escalate themselves to you or interact with you in real time is, I think, always great. Because if they're stuck on a crucial step, you're getting real-time feedback. They don't have to call you. They don't have to access you. So I've used Intercom, I've used HubSpot, I've used Zendesk, I've used different versions of those. When you're a much bigger organization, and you now have a team of customer success managers, and your goal and your challenge is really to create a consistent experience across your CSMs and your customers, then I would look at things like Tatango, Gainsight, Client Success, where you're operationalizing your customer success playbook so that all of your CSMs are creating a consistent but customized experience to your customer base.
Great, super helpful. Okay, we have a number of hands up, so I'm going to start pinning folks, and we can take these questions. So first from, trying to ask to unmute, Sapide and Meredith.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll learn a lot, and love this part about making customers a champion. So what are the steps that we can take to do that in our day-to-day actions and interactions with our customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a great question. I think there are two ways of approaching it. I think one, there's that relationship building. So what are you learning about your customer, right? Like, what is it? Why are they motivated to use your product? Like, what about them, whether they like it or they hate it? I think just like being very open and honest and creating a good channel of communication. As far as actionable ways that you can make them into champions is documenting their wins and sharing those back with them. So sometimes you hear these concepts of like QBRs, quarterly business reviews, or executive business reviews. Those are places where you can highlight, hey, Anna, like, do you remember when we accomplished those 30 contracts in this much time, right? So before you told me it used to take you 50 hours. Now we were able to accomplish it in 35. Like, what a great win. Small wins and big wins. And then I think those are ways that like you share with them, but then you also highlight it to who the additional stakeholders may be. So I always ask, like, who is your boss? Were they my buyer? Are there ways that like using this could help me make you look good in front of your boss? That's actually been super, super successful for me because I'm saying, look, you're a human, I'm a human. Like, we both want to do a great job at what we're doing, but we also want to be recognized for the hard work and effort that we put into this. And then honestly, like this is so funny. I had a client from 5 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, call me the other day. And she was like, Cynthia, I really love the platform that we had with you, which no longer exists. It got bought by a company and then, they changed it. And she was like, I have this need. Is there another product that you would recommend? So she came to me because I made her a champion. I helped them solve problems to ask me what other software she should buy. And I stopped using that software, like 5 years ago. Like I had to go research, but I was so invested in her winning, right? And she brought me along to all of her other clients. So I think just that human relational aspect is so important.
That's awesome. Such a good question. And we're always telling our founders, make your champion internally the hero of the story. And I think that that's exactly what you're advocating for. So
and also the champion part, put them on your website, but tell them, right? Sometimes in B2B, you have to go through a lot of corporate communication stuff, but like sometimes you say sorry later. Sometimes you throw their logo on, or you anonymize their feedback. And you can definitely do that, but also make it your win as well.
I love that. Okay, we're gonna try to take a few more of these. The next one is Vishnu. Please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for the talk today. I really empathize with the firefighting. It seems like we all spend all of our time doing that. And I know you said that's not the end goal here. So my question is, we have a CSM on our team, and you had that breakdown of the 3 roles. There's like an implementation role, and then separately a CSM role. Right now, our CSM kind of does everything. To ask you a question, like the path forward is hazy to get from right now, the CSM does everything, the implementation, all of the customer follow-ups, any support tickets that need to get passed to dev. I just maybe wanted to hear like the story of how you go from like this, what I've laid out today to maybe like a more functional team. Maybe that's like a pipeline for support tickets, like a way for the dev to work with the CSM. Just maybe any thoughts on that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a very common problem. So that's why I was definitely like, you're not alone. So I think one thing that I have done with my CSMs when I felt like everyone, myself included, are looking at each other like, how do we do all of this, at the same time, is I've done a simple exercise where I have them list out what are all of the types of tasks that they do. Like just take a Google sheet and go like, okay, I'm spending time in an onboarding session. I'm spending time creating tickets. I'm spending time reviewing product feature releases. I'm spending time building content with marketing. And I have them list out all of the tasks from A to Z that they go through with a customer. And then I ask them to fill out what percentage of time it takes for them to accomplish those tasks. And so I get, as a leader, right, or as their manager, or even themselves, you get an idea of like, where are they currently spending most of the time? Is it really in support? Is it really in onboarding and implementation? But where are they spending their time versus where do I wish they were spending their time, right? So oftentimes if I'm thinking about, okay, my product is not super sticky, I'm having some churn, then I really want my CSM to focus on the renewal strategy, right? So if I want their time and their motivation and their focus to be on, I want my customer to be able to give me solid feedback to take back to dev. I want my customer to have accomplishments. Like I'm basically saying, I want you to prioritize time with the customer versus time with solving bugs and tickets and issues, or versus time getting them just activated and implemented. Then it's probably time for me to think through, do I make them just a CSS function and bring someone else in to focus on just activation and implementation? Because that activation, the first thing that I always see is implementation and CSMing splitting off, because you can have one implementation manager that can do multiple, right? It's just project management. You can do multiple implementations, and then your CSM can have a book of business as opposed to a project task and a book of business. Now, when you talk about support, this is the thing between support and success. Every first CSM has to be support. That's how you learn about the problems and the issues of your company and your org. And so should the product people, and so should dev, and so should sales. But then it comes to a point where there are probably the like, how do I log in questions versus I'm getting a 404 error question versus, I'm getting stuck here. What does this product actually really do? And then I think it's time to create a dedicated support team and tiering it out. I've created onshore teams. I've created offshore teams that are like, tier 1 versus escalation events. But really at the crux of your question is the beginning. Where is my CSM spending their time realistically versus where do I wish they were spending their time based off of the stage of your company and where you're at with your customer base. I hope that was helpful.
That was so helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll do a couple more. So Abhi, I will pin you and please ask your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Cynthia, thank you so much for doing this. Just real quick question. I'm working on a B2B sports tech startup, and we're relatively early still, so talking to a lot of customers, iterating on MVP. Now, my question was, how should I be thinking about customer success at this stage? And I know you mentioned, in one of your roles, you came in before that first sale was made. Is it more about me building the right persona so then when I have, someone who's full-time on customer success, I'm able to pass that knowledge over and they're able to, really build that relationship once that first sale's made? But what should I be doing now to set myself up well for maybe the next few months?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so one question I would ask yourself is how complex is your solution and or product, right? So I think the times when I've come in early have been when the offering is highly regulated or very complex, right? Like I'm trying to create very big change management, either in how someone does an action or what the service actually does in the industry. I think that's the time where you really want to bring in someone early because you're able to have that person be along for the ride of the product development, as well as those customer questions and journeys that you're doing now, so that when you have your first customer, they're able to really actualize them quickly. I think if you have a product or an offering where it's not as complicated, not as highly regulated, then as long as you're doing a lot of the documentation of the person and personas, as long as you're building out a lot of the knowledge that needs to be kind of like ingested by your customer success people to be successful, but still while learning on the job,
Right.
then I think you can, build and then hire. Versus if you have something that might be more complex or highly regulatory, I think bringing someone in early, and there's plenty for them to do, right? They can start building content, they can start building a knowledge base, they can start creating an implementation plan for you, even though it's not ready. There's plenty for them to do that you probably don't want to do or don't like to do or are not good at. And I think that's okay.
Yep, no, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, one last question from the audience, and then we have a final question for you. So Ramton, please unmute and ask your question.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Cynthia, for doing this webinar. My question was kind of answered in the last one, so I'm just gonna say a comment like building relationship with your early customers. It's so crucial. You got to look at them as extension of your team, because they will engage with you. They will tell you what they like, what they don't like. I have even taken like the first 10 users out to dinner. They were in my area, really talking to them, getting to know them. And they become your ambassadors. They're not just your clients. They become your ambassadors. And eventually they'll become your strongest funnel. They'll become your referral, right? They will talk about you. They will let their coworkers, because they're in the same industry. So it's crucial building that, getting just testimonials from them. It's so important to scaling your business. So yeah, I really want to emphasize just building that relationship. It's very, very important. And thank you for, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you, Ramton, for that comment.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia, quick question. A lot of our founders ask us about compensation for CS teams. So starting from the top, how much variable versus base do you recommend? And also you spoke about some of the key metrics. Do you put these metrics into the variable, or are there other metrics that you like evaluating performance on for attributing the variable compensation?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to go back to this comment about where do you want your people to spend their time? What do you want to drive them? And how that can relate to their compensation. So my personal philosophy is that I want, and I think this is rung true with my sales leaders and my CEOs. So my sales team are driven by making the sale, right? Making that first initial sale. That means all of the effort and all of the things is for them to likely have a split between a smaller base, but a higher variable, right? Because that's the win that they're going to get. When I think about my customer success teams, they are my steady eddies, my in the trenches kind of people, right? So I want them to feel like their focus and their time is on relationship building, is on the long-term goal of the renewal, but I'm also saying all of the components that help you get there are just as important, right? So if implementation takes a long time, onboarding and training, QBRs, all of that leads to the renewal, but it's not just about the renewal. So I opt for a higher base with a bonus structure, right? And so the way that I typically do it is a higher base, and then there might be a bonus or there might be a variable that goes there. And then I typically split that variable into two different functions. So one is what is the customer feedback about you as a CSM? So that's not necessarily NPS, that's not necessarily CSAT. I oftentimes create a separate survey that goes out to my customers that ask, tell me about your interactions with your CSM. Do you feel like you can trust Cynthia? Do you feel like Cynthia knows the product well? Do you feel like she answers your questions in a timely manner? Do you feel like she's good about getting you strong and successful feedback? So that's really about my performance as a customer success manager, not the performance of my product and my offering, right? Going back to my example of I had a really buggy product that I was working on as a CSM, but I was like, Anna, we're going to get there. Or I would hack my way around getting Anna the success that she needed to achieve. Therefore, her trust was in me, and her trust was in me and my transparency with her as my customer that continued to have her buy into my product and my service and my offering. So that's one component. The other component, we can't ignore churn, right? We can't ignore renewals and what that looks like. And so we would look at specifically renewing existing dollars in the book of business. So if I had $100,000, right, like what was there? And I prefer to do it on a quarterly basis. Some companies decide to do it on an annual basis, but you could have an up quarter and a down quarter. And as your folks who are your consistent folks there, they're not sellers, they're not salespeople, right? Like the effort that I put in that quarter, well, actually the effort that I put in all of the quarters before the quarter where my renewal happened should be compensated and be recognized in the quarter that I achieved the renewal. And so I prefer to do it on a quarterly basis as opposed to an annual basis. That's for you all to decide with your leaders. Now, every company does it differently. Some companies have their customer success teams do upsells for existing customers and services, or being able to sell new business and new offering in a land and expand model, right? And this is touchy. So this again is where you have to work with your sales leader and your CEO. I have fought for like an SDR type of compensation for my CSMs if they are able to help convince a customer to buy on a new service. So I've actually done the work, right? A little bit of the work for my AEs to sell something new into an existing customer. But I, as the CSM, do not have time to do all of the things that are part of the sales process to get that over the finish line. But I did tee up my customer to the warm introduction to buying more things, right? So I don't think that should be ignored. You can fight for that and make that happen. But also when your CS folks are like, well, why don't I get the whole commission? It's like, well, there's a lot of work behind that commission, and that is not where I want you to spend your time and focus. Some places may allow for that, or some places just say, just send it back to the AE. Sometimes some places say, send the whole renewal back to the AE, right? Like that's not even part of your CSM. As a non-sales salesperson and a client person for over 20 years, I don't know how not to sell. And so I feel personally frustrated when I don't feel like that's rewarded, acknowledged, or compensated. And so I look for a happy medium. But as a CS leader, I don't want, I've seen it go really wrong where my customer success folks forget that they have a good base and they just think about commission. And then I'm like, hold on, if all you're going to focus is on selling new things, but your customer base is not healthy and happy, then I'm going to have to rethink what this structure looks like. Yep. So I think true customer success is focused on exactly what it says, the success of your customers and your existing base, and the time and the effort and the relationships that are involved there that are different than a sales leader and a sales team. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
that's
Thank you so
phenomenal.
much.
Cynthia, this was incredible. I think just gauging, this is the longest webinar that we've done, Winning Wednesday webinar, and it's because it was so rich and full, and you were just sharing gems. It's clear that you're an incredible asset to early startups. So we're so grateful that you could join us and share all your wisdom with us. So thank you. Please, everyone, help me in thanking Cynthia. A round of
Thank you
applause.
for
I know we're
sticking
all.
with us. Yes, thank you. Yes, I know I went over time, but thank you
No,
very
it's
so
great.
much.
It was all so valuable. And I have to share, folks, join us again in a couple weeks. We'll have another phenomenal speaker, Kelly Schur, who consults as well with early startups, and she'll be talking about sales foundations from 0 to 1. So similar, probably content, except for on the sales side. So those early kind of things that you want to look out for. So thank you for joining us. We hope you are a step closer to winning in go-to-market because of this. So grateful, Cynthia, to have you today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.